Welcome, one and all. We are here. It is Taboo. I don't know why it's not working on the fucking thing here. Hang on just a second. Okay. All right. There we go. So the Arrow's having some issues today. I don't know, but it's having some issues. We should be live now. Okay. Welcome. It is your host, Zan, and Alex is with me as well. And we're going to be talking about more things and stuff, but mostly things in just a moment. Welcome to episode 12 of Taboo. We are live presently, and we have some stuff to talk about today.
Fun time.
Some things and stuff, but mostly things. Again, I am breaking precedent here and just doing a off of the cuff kind of episode as well. I got some really cool things coming up next week. We're going to have all new backgrounds and all sorts of cool stuff that we'll be able to play with. So definitely look for that because it's cool and I think you'll like it. Yeah. How's your week, Alex?
Oh, typical. Work, sleep, eat, drink, deal with sinus issues. Yeah, pretty much.
Nice. Yeah, mine's been about the same. You know, it's payroll week, so of course I go in to do payroll today. And oh, look, it's a Windows update. Shouldn't take too long. 2.5 fucking hours later. Good thing I went in an hour early because, you know, I had to sit there until 10 o'clock this morning, 10:30 actually, before I could even get into my computer.
Well, it's typical Microsoft for you.
Yeah. I think I'm going to switch everything to Linux again because I hate Microsoft. Anyway, oh wait, is that hate speech? I'm sorry. Sorry, they're YouTube and Facebook. If you think that's hate speech, whatever. I can show you some hate speech. At any rate, so we're going to talk, I'm going to start with this young man here. And the reason for that is that he's all over the news, right? Do you know who this is?
Recently, yes. Before yesterday, I'd never heard of the guy.
Jeffrey Edward Epstein. Born January 20th, 1953.
Oh, not so young.
No, not so young. But still. So, I'm going to give a little history on Epstein. If you want to follow along, go to Wikipedia and just look up his name, because that's what I'm going to read off of here really quick, assuming I can read. My contacts have been bugging me today, so who knows. Anyway, he was, because, you know, he recently, quote unquote, committed suicide while he was on suicide watch. Oh, wait, no, that's been changed now. He's no longer under suicide watch. It ended 12 days before he actually died, right? Okay, yeah, whatever.
I love how they always change their stories.
Multi-millionaire, Jeffrey Epstein. He was an American financier and convicted sex offender. Epstein began his career in finance and the investment bank of Bear Stems, whatever, before forming his own J. Epstein and Company until his conviction for sex crimes in 2008. Epstein was a well-connected multimillionaire who moved among the financial, political, and cultural elite of society. Now, if you Google this guy, you can see him shaking hands with not only the rich and powerful from Bill Clinton to all the way up to even Trump, right? And the guy was investigated starting in April 2005 after a parent complained that he molested her 14-year-old daughter. After an investigation, prosecution, and plea negotiation on June 30th, 2008, Epstein pleaded guilty and was convicted by a Florida state court for soliciting to prostitution and the procuring of an under 18 age girl for prostitution. He served 13 months in custody with work release. Now, if you know anything about work release, it's not really custody. You just go there to take a nap in the evening. Otherwise, you're at work. That's in most cases, anyway.
So you can't sleep in your own home, but other than that, whatever.
Pretty much when you're not at work, you're at the jail, is what work release is. So, yeah, he served 13 months in custody with work release as part of a plea deal where federal officers had identified 36 girls as young as 14 who had been molested. Epstein had additionally faced allegations from numerous individuals of holding women as sex slaves, including individuals who were underage.
Nice guy.
He also had a private island. And this is where most of the debauchery happened, was on this private island, where all these rich and powerful men, and I believe women too, would go and fuck boys and girls. Epstein was arrested again on July 6th, this is recent, 2019, on federal charges for sex trafficking of minors in Florida and New York. And, of course, he died on August 10th, just 2 days ago, 2019, reportedly after hanging himself in his Manhattan prison cell. Now, 3 weeks earlier, Epstein had been found unconscious in his jail cells with injuries to his neck and was placed on suicide watch. And this is where the story has changed, which lasted 6 days and ended 12 days before he died. Okay. High profile guy has information on lots of rich and powerful people.
Yeah, I don't think they want that.
And they take him off suicide watch, and then he commits suicide, right? So he was on what's called intense, not periodic suicide watch while he was in there, which is a watch or observation it involves the subject being observed continuously by a person who may be employed in one of several possible capacities, sitting or standing in direct sight or arm's reach of the subject. This is known as a one-on-one kind of suicide watch. Now, in his particular cell, there were cameras, lots and lots of cameras. So basically, he wasn't afforded any kind of privacy. However, right before he died, those cameras all malfunctioned.
Go figure.
Now, an autopsy was performed on August 11th, day after he died. The New York City Medical Examiner's Office announced that it needed more information before the cause of death could be determined, though it's presumed to be suicide.
Gotta love it.
How is suicide not an easy thing to figure out? Did he down a bunch of toilet paper and aspirate? Did he hang himself? Which is interesting because in those prison cells he was in, they don't have anything that you can hang yourself with.
Did he save all the pills for medical attention and then down them all at once?
Those things would all come up in an autopsy, fairly easy to figure out. But at this point in time, the coroner's office needs more information before the cause of death can be determined. Interesting, right? So there was a couple of things here. So obviously this is a big conspiracy theory. When he first died, I'm trying to find that article really quick.
Well, you find that, I've got an interesting point to note on the level of conspiracy theory too. It said that his suicide watch ended 12 days before he committed suicide, but yet they mentioned that the cameras malfunctioned the day that he did commit suicide.
All very convenient.
that doesn't even match up with that. If the cameras malfunctioned in the suicide watch area, he wasn't even there, supposedly. He was out of suicide watch by that point.
Yeah. That's, that's their double whatever, pardon me, backtracking or whatever.
And if I'm not mistaken, the first report said that he died while he was in suicide watch. And then they changed it to 12. But
Yeah.
whatever.
There was another one, and I can't find it right at the moment. But in the article, it said that a man resembling, when they took him out of the prison, right? A man resembling Epstein was carried out on a gurney, presumed because he had killed himself. So this is the only time I've ever seen them say a man resembling somebody was carried out. Usually they'll say, hey, he was carried out after his death, et cetera, et cetera. The other thing I found interesting about it all was that they're carrying him out on a gurney, presumably after he's dead, but the picture showed the EMT with an airbag over his face, like giving him air. That's something you normally don't do to a dead person, is continue to try to make them breathe. They're usually pretty dead at that point in time. And I don't know how many people actually saw that, right? So this is the other thing. Epstein's ear. I know it seems weird, but the picture on the left is Epstein while he was alive. And thankfully this is one where he's not smiling, because when you smile, your ears, they don't change shape, but they can distort a little bit, right? Your ear moves because of the muscles in your face. This one, he's relatively at ease. On the right side is him being dead. Now, I want to call attention to not only his ear here, because that is the thing, right? His ear does not look the same at all.
Nor does his nose, for that matter.
Yeah, that was the other thing I was going to say. This person definitely has a down pointing nose, where Epstein's is kind of pointing straight out, right? So it doesn't even appear to be him, but that ear is the smoking gun for me. That does not look like his ear at all.
And again, their whole
The
resemblance.
ridges are completely different, and ear prints are just about as good as fingerprints. Everybody's ear is unique. And it wouldn't change that much over the course of just a few weeks. And then here's another picture of it. Give me just a second here. So that's the picture that's actually, yeah, the hair in front is also slightly different. Yep. But I mean, that can change in a couple of weeks. I don't know. Maybe he has really fast hair growth. But here is a closer picture of the ear, of both of those ears, that has been, slightly altered because dead guy's ear was laying down. This one's laying up, whatever. So we put them like this. Epstein ear for sure is on the bottom. Unknown person ear on the top. That does not look the same.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but usually the skin color doesn't change that much either.
It can, especially after death, because blood isn't flowing anymore,
Fair enough.
So, yeah. So that ear definitely doesn't look the same. And as you pointed out, the nose does not look the same at all. And even where the nose sits to the eye is different. The facial, also if they're strangled, they would have more blood. Well, although this is presumably, more than a few hours after death. But so you'd think more of that blood would flow out, especially since, they tried to save him, I guess. I don't know. I assume that's why the EMT had a mask over his face, but who knows? But the facial lines don't match up either. See where he's got Epstein on the left has this curve line that goes from the nose down almost to the corner of the mouth. This guy, from the nose, it's further back to his cheekbone, and there's no line there, but there is a line in front of it. So, yeah, I think anybody who does any kind of facial recognition or anything like that would certainly have a field day with this, because I don't see the points in common. The bridge above his nose, to the forehead is also different. Epstein has this little lump here, whereas this guy, it just kind of goes thump. So, I don't know. Seems like some BS to me.
Again, you were mentioning this to me earlier. You don't say reportedly or looks like.
Yeah, appearing as somebody appearing like so-and-so is dead.
You either are or you aren't.
Here's my theory. Well, I have two theories. Either one, he was completely murdered, which, given the high profileness of the case, makes perfect sense, right? Somebody didn't want their information to get out, and so they went and killed everybody. In this case, Epstein.
Would it be the first time?
Which would also explain the weird, cameras malfunctioned. Oops. Oopsie. Oopsie. Oh, and it just so happened he killed himself during that time. As the church lady would say, how convenient. Okay, so either A, he was killed, obviously, right? Or B, the person that they wheeled out does look like him in some ways, but pretty much any older guy is going to look kind of like that. Maybe he went into protective custody.
There's a thought.
Because of the high profile nature of this case, maybe they were like, well, you know what? We need to get this guy out of here. And in order to keep him safe, we're going to fake his death. And we'll put him someplace where nobody knows where he is. Who knows where that would be? And boom. Which also makes sense, because then you'd have the ability for somebody to, say, turn off the cameras or make them malfunction during said time. Wheel him out. And that's the more plausible thought in my mind. And I say that only because when I first heard the news that somebody resembling Epstein was wheeled out, presumably after he had committed suicide. And I looked at the picture that was with that article, and again, there's a picture with somebody, an EMT had a bag over his mouth and was continuing to give him air, oxygen, whatever. Like, you don't do that for a dead person. You just don't. And that was before I saw the ear and all this other stuff about, the facial issues. I was like, and that's the only time I have ever heard them say somebody who looked like somebody else. Usually they would say, Jeffrey Epstein, whatever, committed suicide, and here's a picture of him being wheeled out. Jeffrey Epstein was wheeled out of Manhattan, whatever, prison, whatever, after he committed suicide. And that would have been it. They wouldn't have said somebody who looks like. I've never, ever seen that in any kind of reporting.
Well, for anyone that watches any kind of law shows, NCIS, Law and Order, whatever, there's two basic rules you follow with anything like this, and one of them is always trust your gut, because it usually isn't wrong. And second, especially in NCIS, Gibbs says there's no such thing as coincidences.
Exactly.
It was a coincidence that the cameras malfunctioned. It was a coincidence that they just happened to change their story from he died on suicide watch to he was let off of suicide watch a week and a half before he
And then he
committed
died.
Yeah, it's like, no.
Now, you know, I don't know. I've known people that have been in prison, and yeah, suicide watch doesn't always last a long time, but he had attempted suicide prior to being put on suicide watch. So that and the nature of the case itself, with so many high profile people potentially going to jail over all this, it makes me think that there is no chance in hell he would be taken off suicide watch.
Especially after 6 days.
And after attempting it, just like the week or 2 weeks prior, that doesn't make any kind of sense. But the bigger thing to me is that I think that he's probably under some sort of protective custody by somebody, somewhere, something, and he's actually alive and well. Or, you know, hey, he had the money, maybe he paid enough people off to get him the fuck out of there.
Yeah, the witness protection program was my first thought that just kind of came to mind as to the reality of the situation.
Now, interestingly enough, and I'm trying to find the actual tweet. Where is it? Trump had tweeted something interesting. That, yeah, Mr. Trump retweeted a post from a comedian, Terrence Williams, linking the Clintons to the death of Mr. Epstein. Quote, he had information on Bill Clinton and now he's dead, wrote Mr. Williams. Trump supporter in accompanying 2-minute video, Mr. Williams noted that for some odd reason, people that have information on the Clintons end up dead, which is very true. There's no evidence to substantiate the claim, which he derives from groundless speculation from the far right. Yeah, dating to Mr. Clinton's early days as president, that multiple deaths can be traced to the Clintons and explained by their supposed efforts to cover up wrongdoing.
It wasn't my fault. They made me do it. I have no guilt in this. Whatever.
But, so let's see, where is it? So there was something posted by the Washington Post that says Epstein's case will be dismissed, but his death has far-reaching legal consequences. Now, again, I don't really care what any of the mainstream media says because 90% of it is bullshit, in my opinion. I'm just rereading this article here. Epstein's death makes it look as if an indictment never happened. He'll be presumed innocent of the charges in perpetuity, which means because he's dead, it doesn't matter. The evidence gathered in his case and harm he allegedly inflicted will continue to have far-reaching legal consequences for his victims, his allies, and his estate. Despite this, lawyers representing Epstein's accusers said Saturday that their clients will continue to seek justice for the people they claim to enabled Epstein's illegal alleged abuse. Quote, the criminal case against Epstein died when he did, said the New York University law professor Stephen Gillers. When a defendant dies before trial or after trial, but before appeals are completed, a prosecution concludes. But in a statement released Saturday by Manhattan U.S. Attorney Jeffrey Berman, confirmed Epstein's death and recommitted his office to giving Epstein's victims their day in court. Quote, to those brave young women who already came forward and to the many others who have yet to do so, let me reiterate that we will remain committed to standing for you, and our investigation into the conduct charged in the indictment, which included a conspiracy count, remains ongoing.
How convenient.
And that opened it up the potential for anyone who aided or abetted Epstein's crimes to be investigated and prosecuted. So we'll see what happens. But I tend to think one of two things. Either he was offed or he's somewhere in protective custody and this will actually continue. And they have to play it out, at least in the media, as if it's not going to continue. So who knows? So that's all I got on Epstein. Comments, questions, cute remarks?
That's just a load of shit in my mind, but hey, whatever. You know, the few of us that actually do see the truth, you know, whatever. They won't listen to us. We're psycho.
You know, regardless of whether it's true or not, it seems really fucking convenient. And that just doesn't happen. Convenience is not a way of life. So, okay. So moving on to other things and stuff. I wanted to talk a little bit about energy. What do you know about energy? Wrong. That's what you know about energy. Pardon me. So, the first thing about anything that I teach is you need to understand that you need to unlearn the crap that you've learned. And by that, I mean you need to unlearn the crap that you've learned. Most people have learned stuff that is totally and completely incorrect. I'm wondering why. I'll need this. Hang on just a second. I need to fix something on the stream because I notice our chat room's jacked up.
The thing that I've found most difficult since trying to learn new things is that unlearning what you've learned and what has been programmed into you since birth has got to be one of the most difficult things that I have ever attempted. I feel like I'm making progress, but I also feel like I'm a long ways away.
Well, and that's, I mean, more to the point, that kind of is the point. A lot of people are told all sorts of weird things about energy or nothing at all about energy, and so they don't understand it. So I'm going to give you kind of an example. Okay? So energy is something that is infinite. Well, no, okay, let me change that. It is finite. There is a certain amount of energy within this universe that exists, and that's all the energy that there is. Okay? So in order to demonstrate this, I would say get a bucket of water. Okay? The water that fits in that bucket is all the energy in the universe. Again, this is an example. I'm not saying that's actually all the energy in the universe, because that would be just stupid. So that bucket represents all the energy in the universe. Now get 10 cups. Glass cups, by the way. Fill each of those glass cups with water from the bucket. Okay. So now you have 10 individuals, if you will, in the cups, full of energy. Okay? Now we're going to let these cups sit out for 10 years. Okay? Some of that energy is going to be gone. It has been used, whatever, and the grand scheme of things, it's been expended, but it's not gone. It just changes into in this case, we're talking water, so it changes into a gas, which will later rain back into the bucket. Make sense so far?
Yes.
Okay. Then let's take a hammer, and we're going to shatter one of those glasses. Oh no, the water goes everywhere, right? Okay, technically, yes, that's true. The water that's left in that glass goes out into the universe. But there's still going to be some in there, unless you really shatter that fucker, and then there's not going to be any in there, but it'll be everywhere else. So again, that energy, in this particular case, that individual glass is a person. When it's shattered, not only is that person dead, but usually tragically, right?
Gone before your time.
Exactly. Gone before all the energy that was bestowed upon you has been used. So in this particular case, we're going to put like 5 or 6 drops of food coloring into the water. And let's call it red. So what's left in that shattered glass is now red colored water. Okay? The rest of that water that gets thrown out and splashed everywhere, eventually it's going to, quote unquote, evaporate and go back into the bucket. Still following me?
Yep.
Okay. So, because the vessel that held that energy is now dead, we can just take that energy and pour it back into the bucket. Okay? So, now what we're going to do is we're going to put some blue food coloring, some green, and some, yellow in the other containers so that they're all an individual color is what I'm getting to. And 10 more years go by. We're going to shatter another one. This person just died. Okay, same thing. We're going to dump its colored water back into the bucket. Now, initially, when you dump that water into the bucket, what happens? So in the red case, we'll go back to red because it's the first and the easiest one to grasp conceptually. It merges with all the other energy out there and kind of turns all the other energy out there kind of a pinkish color, right? So if enough time takes place, what happens with that red energy? It begins to coalesce. So you're going to have this spot inside the bucket that looks redder than the water around it. And again, this is a time thing. Just bear with me. It's all metaphorical. Same that's going to happen once you pour the yellow in and the blue and the green and all this stuff. Eventually, you're going to have all these little sections that are different colored water. If you let it sit long enough, it's going to filter that way. So before we let it do that, what we're going to do is we're going to fill a new glass with some of that water from the bucket. Now this time the water is no longer clear. It has some red, some yellow, some blue, et cetera in there. Why do you think that is?
Energy is being created, I suppose, if you want to put it that way. That's bad analogy, but people have a child, they need energy to fill that life form, and that's taking place before the energy has time to coalesce again. So they're dipping from the pool.
You got there in a weird way, but yes. So you're basically filling that new glass with some of the water that has some of the energy from the 10 original people. Okay? So it contains some of the energy that was, if you will, tainted, or you can call it tainted, you can call it, imprinted upon, whatever. All energy everywhere has consciousness. From the light in your bulb all the way to you, it has consciousness. It is not unconscious energy. That alone is a really tough thing for most people to grasp. But, okay, so now you have this cup and it has some of everybody in it. And again, if you let that cup sit long enough, what are you going to get? You're going to get little pieces of red that are more red, blue, yellow, green, whatever colors that you had, because like energy wants to coalesce or be with like energy. And so it coalesces in various spots. But you'll also notice now that this new person has their own energy, which may or may not have been tainted, if you will, by another color. And so they have a bunch of clear as well as the colored. So now what happens is we're going to put, I don't care, violet. We're going to put some violet food coloring in this water, shake it all up, because that's symbolizing that person's identity. Okay? And we're going to shatter the glass. So once we shake it all up, everything is completely, totally violet, right? It looks, at least the majority of it's going to look violet. because it's shaken up. Maybe a little dirty violet, whatever. And we're going to dump that back in the bucket. Now this time when you fill another vessel, if you will, with water, it's going to have some of that violet in there that it didn't have before. Now each of these colors represent the imprint that you leave upon energy. Each one of those colors. So imagine, if you will, if you're the 2000th generation, or the 2 millionth, whatever. You have all these different energies within you from previous life. This is what you tap into when you go through past life regression, is those different energies. It's not that you, in your physical form, have lived before, because you haven't. You're a completely new vessel. It's that you contain all these different energies from the past or future, as it may be, because energy is without time. We'll get into that in another episode. But so you have all these different energies in you, and sometimes, let's say there's a lot of the red or a lot of the blue. Sometimes those memories will come to the surface because there's more of that energy within you. So that's energy and how it works. Now, when you're in the bucket, you're part of the universe as we know it here, this universe. But there are other buckets. There are other universes, if you will. Now, can the energy from our universe go into a different one? Absolutely. How does that happen? Same thing. Somebody smashes the bucket. Water goes everywhere. Some of it splashes. Some of it goes into the next bucket next to it. It doesn't matter. That is how you get different feelings of connectedness, if you will. Connectedness not only to this universe, but to other universes. And the same thing is true for those buckets. Let's say all those buckets are in a fish tank. And the fish tank breaks. Oh, shit. And that bucket is in a tote. Or that fish tank is in a tote. And that that tote is in a box. And that box is in a moving van. And that moving van, you get in the picture? There's a lot of energy out there. And it doesn't feel like it's finite, but it is. You're only given so much when you become.
But the thing that I find very fascinating and very interesting is that regardless how many times the glasses are filled, the buckets are filled, how many times they're shattered, that energy never goes away. Yes, the amount of energy is finite, but
it recycles constantly.
Yeah.
It's just, like I said, it's just like water. And that's why I use this as an analogy, because water, even though, if you had it, think of a terrarium, right? A completely sealed system. You put 6 ounces of water in there, okay? And you let time go. It turns into a mist. It turns into condensation on the glass. It falls back down into there is always going to be 6 ounces of water in there. It never gets eaten. I mean, even consumed. It still becomes, later on, it's going to be back to water. And that's the beauty of it, is that it is forever. So when you hear things like, you have an old soul, what do you think that means?
It means you have either one or a couple
I know I'm putting you
segments.
on the spot and it's making you nervous, I can tell.
Yeah, you have a way of doing that. It's very coalesced. One or many energies that have gone through the life cycle over and over and over.
You hit it on the head with the coalesced. So basically what that means is that, so let's say we go back to our first 10, or I'm just going to say 4 colors: red, orange, yellow, and blue. Okay. So if you're an old soul, right, your energy is more one color than another, or multiple colors, it could even be. It means that there has been so much time, and that's the key. The time between your death and the next vessel that you inhabit, so to speak. The more time that passes between that, the more your colors coalesce. Just like in the individual bucket or in the individual glass. If you let it sit long enough, those colors are going to separate out. And that's the same thing here. So let's say, I'm just throwing numbers. These have no tangible anything about them. But let's say your first life, you're red. And before you come around to be recycled into a new vessel, 100 billion years have passed. That's a long time for your energy to find itself. Like energy seeks like energy.
Magnetism.
It's not necessarily magnetism, it's energy. I mean, energy or magnetism is a form of energy, yes. But the more you coalesce and get put into, say, a new body, that just means that you have more coalesced energy in you than, say, the person sitting to your neck or to your side, whatever, behind you, in front of you, wherever. So take that as a compliment when people say, God, you have an old soul. That means you're wise. You've been here at least once. And in many cases, as you mentioned, it's been a very long time and you've completed that life cycle over and over again. And so your energy conforms and coalesces more and more and more.
What annoys me is that every time you are brought into a vessel, physical form on whatever planet you get put on, you forget every freaking thing you learned, for the most part.
That's not entirely true. Actually, it's very far from truth. Because, I could say, why do you think babies cry? Just because they can't express what they're feeling doesn't mean they're not feeling it. Like, oh crap, I'm here again. That's enough to make me cry.
Not
So-
this bloody shit again.
There's the controversy between reincarnation and creation, basically. Right? So, people who believe in reincarnation believe basically what I'm talking about right here, at least in some aspect. People who believe strictly in creation are like, no, that's not true. When you die, you go to heaven or hell. Okay. What is heaven or hell? Energy.
Pretty much.
Hell is defined as, quote unquote, the absence of God, or being beyond the sight of God. Well, wait a minute. That doesn't make sense, because if God is all knowing and all powerful, wouldn't he see you no matter whether you were in hell or heaven or whatever? Anyway, that's a whole nother episode. And so, there's reincarnation people who think that you get reincarnated as a dog. Hey, if you're lucky, sure. Why not? Why couldn't you be reincarnated as a dog? So this goes into what we'll be talking about more in the Law of One, with the different dimensions, and the different steps that you take. Now, when you're reincarnated or when you're put in a new vessel, what's the point?
Lessons to be learned.
But isn't that more ascribed by people? For example, if you've been born 20 times, do you think the 21st is going to be any different?
Depends on the situations they're put into.
Well, an interesting theory is that you are and will be, in this life and many others, going through everything everybody's ever done. Which kind of makes sense. Because if energy is infinite, if energy is ever recycling, we'll say, never ending, et cetera, et cetera. It's certainly a possibility that you will one day be a gray alien. One day you'll be a fish. One day you might be a snail. One day you might be a sunflower or a tree or a beetle. The point is that at some point or another, whether you realize it or not, you will be part of everything. And that's the point, is that we are not disconnected from the beetle or the sunflower or the snail. They are all parts of us. And there isn't like a ladder where I started out as an amoeba, became a snail, and then a dog and a cat. Kind of fit the cat personality. I hate everything. And then one day I was a horse. Next life I was a donkey. Didn't do well as a horse. And then I became human. Now there's not there's not a social ladder that you have to climb. Once you've been around the block a few times, you can actually choose more of who, where, what, and why. You know, who am I going to be? Or what am I going to be? No, I'm going to pull back out of this container here before it gets filled and wait for the next one. This is basically it. Your energy consciousness keeps you together until that next vessel needs to be filled, whether it's a snail, whether it's, you know, a smurf, whatever. Yeah. So the whole point of life, it's to live, to experience things. To be part of life is to be part of existence in any form, whether you're a snail. I keep going back to the snail. Whether you're a snail, a dog, or a person, it's to be a part of life and to learn kindness, to learn love, to learn et cetera, et cetera. That's why, for example, I think dogs are much higher than people because they have learned unconditional love. Sure, you can smack them, you can hit them, you can punish them for pooping or peeing on the floor, but really what purpose does that serve?
Not much. Well, occasionally they'll learn, oh, hey, this isn't something I should be doing, and I need to ask before so I can do it where I need to do it, but...
Well, that's just training, but, I mean, ultimately, you know, you could scold a dog, and 10 minutes later, they're still right back in your lap, loving you up. A cat, on the other hand, you scold a cat don't give a fuck, and the cat is more likely going to kill you, whether it likes you or not. Cats just don't care.
Or they'll get mad and frustrated and spray even more.
Yeah, well, exactly. Cats are very finicky. But, you know, I mean, the point is that you're supposed to learn lessons until you have ascended. And what does that mean? It means going to the next level, leveling up, if you will, for all those gamers out there that are listening.
You gain experience, you gain all the experience you need, and then what happens? Oh, no, I'm level 4. Woohoo!
Exactly. And we'll get into more of that with the density stuff with the Law of One. And it's interesting. It's kind of, again, conceptually speaking, there's a lot of things that we're going to be talking about and teaching on this channel that people are going to have a hard time with. So if you have comments or questions, feel free to send them to show@taboo.media. Call in 970-999-5176. Put them in the chat rooms, whatever. I did have somebody from so before I say that, so basically what happens is before each show, we end up forwarding that number to a number that we're actually using. And for the live show anyway. I mean, we always use that number, but occasionally, apparently, some people forget to take it off call forwarding, and I ended up getting a phone call couple of days ago, I guess it was, from one of the listeners, and he didn't tell me who he was or really what he wanted to talk about. He did say there were some things that we had discussed that he did not feel were accurate, and these were political things. I'd really like to get him on the show so that we can talk about those things. However, yeah, it should have gone to the voicemail where he could have said something, and then we'd, either call him or not, depending on if that's what he wanted, to talk to him on the air. So occasionally that kind of stuff happens, and I do apologize for that, but, life is full of interesting choices that we make, or rather don't make. So there was that. I'd really like him to call back in if he happens to be listening right now. I don't know. I think he was somewhere in Canada, I think. Forgive me if I'm wrong on that. I don't remember if we even said anything. I think I just looked up your phone number and saw it was from Canada, if I remember right. At any rate, the whole point of tonight is that we're going to be talking about all sorts of stuff. We do have a Patreon account, or patron account, if you will, and we're going to be adding stuff to that isn't going to be live streamed. So all that stuff is coming. Also, starting next week, I believe. Yeah, more than likely next week or the week after. I'm not sure which, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be next week. We're going to have all sorts of new toys for our stream, and we will be utilizing those as well. What else? Hi, puppy. My dog's name is Sadie. She's the love of my life. Aren't ya? Yeah. Anyway, other than that, I don't have anything else for today. If you have any comments, questions, cute remarks, surely get them to us. Surely get them to us, and we will be happy to talk about whatever you want.
Don't call me Shirley.
10 points if you know who or what movie that was from.
I do. It was Airplane.
Who said it, though?
Yeah, you got me there. You said what movie? I got the movie, darn it.
Over, under? Who's over, under? I am serious, and don't call me Shirley. Anyway. So that's all I got for this week. If you have anything that you want to talk about, extra, I don't know.
Not much. My brain's kind of...
Leslie Nielsen. Today. Good job, Michelle. You're right. She was talking about the "Don't Call Me Shirley" quote.
Yeah, it's been years and years since I saw that movie, and when I did see it, I was too young to appreciate the humor.
Yeah, that's a good one. So are all the Naked Guns. I love Leslie Nielsen. He was awesome. Wasn't he, Sadie? Sadie thinks he was awesome, too. She perked up when I said his name. So, yeah. Another interesting thing I want to mention, if you haven't seen it, and I actually haven't, I just heard about it, but the movie A Dog's Life demonstrates this whole reincarnation thing, too. So it's a good movie if you like animals.
It is. I watched it. It made me cry.
That's probably why I haven't watched it yet. Because I'm very attached to my dog, and I don't like seeing animals in distress. But that's another story.
Another good one, now that you brought that one up, is A Dog's Way Home. And that kind of integrates the fact that animals understand the unity better than we do as humans.
Yep, that wouldn't take much. All right, well, the beeping in the background happens to be the air conditioner, who is going to turn on any moment now. So I am going to wrap this up. Again, if you have anything that you want us to talk about, feel free to give us a call, 970-999-5176, or send us an email, show@taboo.media. Any of the chat rooms as well, we try to maintain an eyeball on those throughout the week. Sometimes that doesn't always work, so definitely hit us up. And Thank you again for watching, listening, and participating. And you have a great rest of your day.